I'd always thought I'd been in control of my life, no matter how fucked up my way of handling things was. Keeping my shit together was something I had taken pride in, so it was terrifying to see my grip of things steadily slipping away, even if it had only ever been an illusion. My life had become a roller coaster, filled with the same ups and downs like the one at Pacifica. But instead of throwing my hands into the air and pretending to soar freely as though I were flying, I felt like I was hanging on for dear life and praying not to fall off the rails. The crying fits happened at the strangest times. The first one had taken place a few days earlier when I'd been in the shower. I hadn't been thinking about anything dour. In fact, I had been trying to figure out what to have for breakfast when I felt a sudden flutter in my heart. Before I knew it, I was sobbing uncontrollably. It didn't last long, and I was able to quickly pull myself back together, but it still scared the shit out of me. I told V what happened, and she didn't know what to make of it either. Pent-up emotions, the subconscious creeping toward the surface, repressed memories. Hell, it could have even been one of those things. Though that had been my default answer and not hers. Who knew? It had only happened once, and there didn't seem to be much reason to dwell on it. Then, yesterday, I had been updating my resume on the couch, trying to fill in the years-long gap since the last time I dusted it off, when suddenly I found myself curled up into a ball, crying my eyes out. V had rushed over in a panic to console me, and after a few minutes, I was all better. But it had rattled me and kept me up for much of the night. Something was happening inside of me, and I didn't know what it was. Nearly a week had passed since we'd set ourselves on the path of getting out of Night City. V had sold her bike and netted an eye-raising sum. It was tempting to think of all the things we could get now that our account was flush with eddies, but that was the old Judy talking. The new one had spent the last few hours apartment hunting with V. We decided to pick out our new roach motel while sitting at the kitchen counter of our existing one. The sun was low on the horizon as we clutched our hollows, swiping past one apartment after another, each one seemingly more dilapidated than the one before it. If nothing else, we were dressed appropriately and would fit right in with our torn sweatpants and shirts we'd lounged around in all day. Still, it didn't take long before we realized we needed to set our sights a little higher. "What about this one?" V asked. I peered at her screen and raised an eyebrow. Why settle for the ordinary when you are extraordinary? Come visit Chateau Estates, designed by award-winning architect Amanda Moreau, where soaring ocean views and unrivaled luxury V, come on. What? We could afford it. Sure, and it would be the greatest month ever before we got thrown out on our broke asses. Fine, V grumbled. But don't say I never tried to... V was interrupted by a buzz from her hollow. I saw her optics light up as she took the incoming call. River? What's up? My eyes perked up. It had been the first time either of us had heard from him since the ring had been busted up. Her eyes remained distant as she listened for what seemed like ages. I searched V's expression for any hint of what he was saying. I was about to interrupt when she glanced at me and broke her silence. Hey, River, can I put you on speaker? I think she'll want to hear this. Thanks. My brow narrowed as V transferred the call to her hollow. River's face appeared, flanked by what appeared to be a trailer home. Judy, how are you? I'm all right, I said, smiling. About as good as can be expected. That's good to hear. So, I was telling V that I got a call from Sergeant Myers a little while ago. She had some updates on the investigation that I thought I'd pass along. A chill shot up my spine. Updates? Had the badges fucked something up and cut them loose? Relax, V said, resting an arm on my shoulder. I hadn't realized how tense I'd become. It's good news. V's right, River continued. We've got confessions from 7 of them so far, and not just for what they tried to do to both of you, but also for your kidnapping and rape. I don't know what the last one is waiting for, but it's his loss. The judges are never kind to holdouts. I didn't need River to tell me which one had decided to make a defiant stand. I wondered if Bishop knew he'd been sold out by all of his so-called chooms and was about to find himself utterly alone for the rest of his miserable life. Pity indeed. "Tell her the rest," V exclaimed. "The rest?" A small smile spread across River's face as he lifted a slice of pizza and bit into it. "The officers leading the interrogations were thorough and pressed for every detail they could get out of him. Not just for information pertaining to what they had done to you, but to dozens of other victims as well. They also got a wealth of deets on their operations, which led to a pair of raids being kicked off over the last few days. Did you hear about them in the news?" I shook my head. Following the scream sheets wasn't something I'd ever done, and I had no plans to start now. The first raid was on an abandoned mini-mart out near Haywood. It was the site for an XBD pressing operation. The badges confiscated thousands of XBDs that were about to be sold on the streets. River paused, taking a deep breath. "They also got their hands on all the raw files too, including yours. Once the investigation is concluded, it'll all be purged and the XBDs destroyed." An indescribable wave of relief suddenly crashed over me. I'd accepted it as fact that even with the Death Head members arrested and their entire twisted studio put out of business, that the damage had still been done. Lizzie's secret would remain on the streets for decades to come. The blue-haired slut in the Virtue providing tens of thousands of strangers the fuck of a lifetime. But that wouldn't happen now. I'd been spared that final humiliation. Jesus, I hadn't expected that news to hit me as hard as it did. I wasn't about to cry or anything like that, and that was rather bizarre, considering I seemed to be breaking out into tears every chance I got. But still. "So," I cleared my throat, "you said there was another raid?" River nodded. "The first one who loosened his tongue also let slip about a payment they made to the Claws, some sort of sick bounty to keep you alive. The PD was able to trace the transaction, and the deposit was placed in a private account belonging to one Hiromi Sato, one of the most senior members of the Tiger Claws and the legal owner of Clouds. It's a dollhouse out in Westbrook." I didn't bother telling River I knew more about Clouds than he could ever imagine. It still stung to think about it after everything that had happened. Once they cracked his account, they found all kinds of shady shit. Ties to known felons, fraudulent docs and deeds, telltale signs of money laundering. The guy wasn't even trying to hide it. He was using funds from the account to pay for business expenses, which is a big no-no. The badges swept in yesterday and wiped the place clean. 13 arrests, including Sato. He's cooling his fat ass behind bars, waiting to be brought up on a long list of charges, including the murder of Roxanne Sumner. Now, I was on the verge of tears. V rubbed my back, which helped matters, but didn't fully push away the sadness I felt when Roxanne's name had been mentioned. She'd never gotten rid of her freckles. Instead, she'd found herself under the sword of that fat bastard, her rotting skull nothing more than a conversation piece for them to chuckle at. Did they still have it there on display like they said they would? I had to know, as terrified as I was of the answer. This is kind of a weird question, but you see, those fuckers didn't just kill her, they found it, River quickly interjected. Once the coroner has finished their forensics, her remains will be joined with those already in the columbarium. It was too much. I choked back a sob and buried my face in my hands. V was right there, lips pressed against my hair in an unending kiss. "It's okay," V said soothingly. I just wish I could have helped her. She was so fucking scared." V pulled away and glanced at the hollow. "Hey, River, can I call you back later?" "Sure, talk later." I was still shaking when I felt V's hands trying to work their way under my own so she could cup my cheeks. Wiping my tears away, she tilted my gaze to meet hers. "You can't blame yourself for what happened to her." I don't. Honestly, V, I know I'm not responsible for what those animals did. I just wish I could have helped her. Like, really helped her, you know? V slowly nodded. Like you wanted to help all those joy toys off the street when you joined the mocks. Or when you wanted to help the dolls by trying to take down clouds. Twice. How you wanted to help that one actress you stumbled across. The girl from the BD you told me about. Katie. Yeah. Shit. I think you just summed up all my failures, I mumbled. V's eyes hardened and her hands pressed firmly against my cheeks, keeping me from diving back into my grief. I already knew a pep talk was coming my way, but it seemed out of place considering the pile of evidence V had dumped in my lap demonstrating how big of a screw-up I was. Finally, she shook her head. Judy, as brilliant as you are, you really do have a skewed view of things, don't you? Since I couldn't look away, I shrugged instead. It's not skewed if it's true, V. I'm not lying about any of this, and I'm not saying that you are, but you're not seeing things the way they really are. Think about how many shouting matches you got in with that cunt Susie over the joy toys you were pulling off the streets. I remember hearing about quite a few of them. And in case you didn't notice, you did succeed in shutting clouds down, even if it wasn't the way you intended to. And who knows, maybe that'll help Katie in finding something better for herself. You've helped, Judy. You've helped more than most ever do. I knew V was being honest with me on how she saw things, but a lingering doubt continued to nag at me. Sure, I'd gotten joy toys off the streets, but what had happened to any of them? And clouds might be closed for good, but what would become of the dolls now that they were out of jobs? And Katie? Christ, I felt so responsible for what had happened to her. V's comment that maybe she would find something better hinged on one enormous word. Maybe. There wasn't a single person I knew who I could point to and say they were truly better off because of something I'd done. Had I helped? Had anything I'd done mattered? But what good is it if I didn't save any of them? I asked before adding, couldn't save Roxanne? Or Evelyn? V pulled her hands away and rested them on my shoulders. You can't save people from themselves. I don't care who you are. No one is that strong. But you've saved people, Judy. Who the fuck did I save? Name me one fucking person. I didn't expect V to have a good answer for that. I had racked my brain trying to think of someone, anyone, and had come up empty. Probably for good reason. Me. What? You saved me from what that was River, not me, I reminded her. He's the one who busted in and got us out of that mess, and he only found us because of you. You asked for help. You gave us a fighting chance. You're the one responsible for shutting those fuckers down before they could have done the same thing to me. You saved me. You saved others who would have had the same thing happen to them. And you saved yourself, Judy. V looked like she was about to break down into tears. Neither of us had realized how firmly she'd been holding on to me until she stopped talking. She let go of me, and her eyes briefly drifted toward the bathroom. You could have given up. You could have stayed silent and not screamed for help like you did. You could have done the same thing as Evelyn, but you didn't. You held on, kept yourself going, and because of that, we've got ourselves a chance at a fresh start. We both know we're taking all our baggage with us when we leave here, but I also think we're in a lot better shape now than we were before. How many people can say they were dragged through so much shit and somehow came out cleaner on the other side? That was a good question. From the outside, we must have looked like a broken couple, both grasping onto each other for dear life as one wave after another crashed over us. But I didn't feel like that at all, and I knew V didn't either. We'd weathered all the storms that had come our way, and we were standing even taller than before. Jesus, I finally whispered, rubbing my temples. Yeah, V agreed. V didn't say anything else after that, choosing instead to continue browsing apartments. It gave me a chance to process things. Maybe she was right. Maybe I really had done some good and kept others from falling victim to the same fate I had. I wanted to believe that, but had I really saved myself? Sure, I could have dug the razor as deep as possible into my wrist and dragged it up the length of my forearm if I had really wanted to die. But what would have happened to me that night if V hadn't been there? How far would I have gone?
You know that's bullshit. Come on, tell me what's up. You can trust me, Jude.
I felt that same flutter in my heart. My throat suddenly tightened, and before I knew it, I was crying once again. V turned and rushed to my side. Even though her face was blurred through the tears in my eyes, I was grateful she was there. I hated not knowing what was causing this. Hated not knowing why this fucking sting burning inside of me wouldn't go away, no matter how much I gasped between sobs as I finally made the connection. V heard it. What is it? They all lied to me. What? V asked, confused. Who lied to you? I actually laughed out loud, which, I was sure, made V even more worried, but I couldn't stop myself. It hadn't been guilt festering beneath the surface all this time like I thought. No, it had been a massive dose of my own medicine that had somehow gone unnoticed until now. Here at the counter with V, Cindy. The shower, Evelyn. My resume, Rita. It all added up. Cindy, Rita, even Evelyn. They all lied to me. Cindy, I already told you what she was and what she did. Thought she would be my first choom, and instead she screwed my head up. Years later, I met Evelyn, and I remember thinking to myself, now I have someone who will always be there for me. It wasn't her fault what happened to her, but I know now that she was still present in her head, knowing what she was going to do to herself no matter how much it would hurt me. She lied every fucking second she stayed silent. And then Rita, Jesus, V, you saw the way she was acting when she was here before, right? V nodded knowingly. All these years I thought she was my choom, and all that time she wanted something else from me. I sniffled. Why couldn't any of them have just been honest about who they were? Why did they all lie? That spiteful voice in my head told me they'd lied because I deserved it, but I quickly pushed it away. No one deserved to feel like this. Judy, I don't know why. Maybe for the same reason I lied to you about getting hooked on those fucking pills. The same reason you lied to me. We all got our demons, and we don't want anyone else to ever know about them. I sighed and wiped away at my face. V was right. It all came down to that awful feeling I'd lived with for so long. Shame. Everyone felt it to varying degrees for one reason or another, deserved or otherwise, but it always manifested itself in the same way. Lies, not only to others, but to one's own self. I'd lied and been lied to for so long, it was no wonder it had been such a struggle to trust V. An idea sprung to mind, one which stopped the tears from falling. Whatever this was I was trying to work out, I knew that I needed to put all my focus and energy into trying to untangle it all, and I couldn't do that if there were any loose threads. I couldn't do anything about Evelyn. It was simply too late. But there was still some time for Rita, and perhaps even for Cindy. Like V had said, I couldn't save them, but maybe I could at least help them and, in doing so, help myself. Maybe.